That's crazy. That's crazy.
Both are really sweaty. Anyway, I think you're making the right choice. A truck will never let you down.
I've got to go.
Go! Another one out!
I'm sure it's nothing, Cheryl, but you'll probably feel better after a doctor's taken a look at it.
Well, Mom, just 4 left. That's great.
Yeah, and it'll be 3 before you know it. Here, hold this.
Ow!
What is wrong with you? You're attracted to her, she's attracted to you. The only problem is in your head. Listen, if you try to build relationships on looks, you are in for a world of hurt. I take Janet here. 20 years ago, she marries her husband because she thinks he looks like Lee Majors. And today, he's lost all his hair, he's gained 200 pounds, and she is stuck with a blimp who won't even put on his shirt to come to the dinner table. She is reduced to trying to win his attention by bringing home a truck. I mean, how sad is that?
That is what I'm doing, isn't it?
You see that? That took courage. You are 99% sure you turned your oven off. Don't drive yourself crazy. Besides, dogs have an instinct to run away from fire.
Oh! There goes number 3. And then there were 2. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're going to be crowning a winner.
So it's just you and me. All the little children have gone home. You have any kids? 4. 5. Epidurals, please. You tear like an old sock.
All right, ladies. Time for another bathroom break. You're not taking a break, Mabel?
I'm good. Me too.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and off!
Too many music. The best way to...
Just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. Come on, it's a joke. I'm just joking. Okay, fine. I'm not joking. Deal with it.
Looking for this?
What are you doing with that?
It stinks of Rick.
Why? Why would you do that? What is the matter with you people?
You can never leave. She cannot remain.
I'm Morty C-137.
We detected a compromised portal gun. Where is your Rick?
He's in prison.
Summer.
He got captured by the Federation and we were going to rescue him.
We'll dispatch SEAL Team Rex immediately to break into the prison holding C-137.
Booyah.
And assassinate him.
Boona.
Yeah! SEAL Team Rex in the house! Bye, Rick. Bye, Rick. T-99, you okay? Bummed I didn't get to give that insect dick a test drive. Wait. The Council of Rick sent us. We have your Morty and Summer. They're prisoners on the Citadel. Great.
Looking for this?
What are you doing with that?
It stinks of Rick.
Why? Why would you do that? What is the matter with you people?
You can never leave. She cannot remain.
I'm Morty C-137.
We detected a compromised portal gun. Where is your Rick?
He's in prison.
Summer.
He got captured by the Federation and we were going to rescue him.
Dispatch.
I saw a video where someone flew up to their TNT beacon, and after they placed all of the TNT, they accidentally placed a redstone block instead of their beacon. Cutting to an edit saying I made a huge mistake, but I think I can save it, and by copying their exact TNT pyramid with World Edit, we can actually see if it works. Okay, water bucket MLG, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Place the redstone. Oh no! Can I literally just break it and place the water bucket? Well, it still worked. I saw a video where someone flew up to their TNT.
What time is it? What time is it?
What's up?
Don't want the ball back to him. Stay there, let him go get the ball.
Where are you getting all this money?
Juvie job saved up.
You better.
We have a new student! Give him a hand!
I'll just get mad.
I said, my nigga, what you doing? Stick that dick back in my
Jarvis, turn down the music.
Captain.
Thank you. People cannot know we're gay. Wait, is that Ice Spice? Yo, guys, we got some company. Really? Hit it, Diddy. Move out the way, fuck you. Holy shit. Ice Spice, I am your biggest fan.
Holy shit,
Close the door!
I said, my nigga, what you doing?
Guys.
Weiß nicht, wo dein Bunker liegt, ruf ich die Panzerknacker. Unbekannter vor der Tür und ich werd angespannter. Kauf mir eine neue Uhr, ein Zeichen, dass ich schnapp gemacht hab. Er musste von...
What kind of car do you drive?
All I have is a sincere heart.
What kind of car do you drive?
I have money.
I want to get to the other side of the river.
All I have is a sincere heart.
I want to get to the other side of the river.
I have money.
I want to go to the beach.
All I have is a sincere heart.
I want to go to the beach.
I have money.
Ugh.
Wait, what's wrong?
Bro. Baseball highlights.
Oh, you're gone. I don't know who said it, and if they don't want to leave, you're all gone.
But I wasn't even talking about you, but I'll leave gladly.
Bubble! Did he just say was that a balk?
Yeah.
Strike!
When freedom gets replaced with rules nobody asked for.
Switch.
All will be revealed, my child.
Stop! No!
Playing League all day until the sun comes up. I'm a chud, I'm a chud.
There's somebody that actually has a...
So who's finna tell me that shape?
I hid a room somewhere in this giant lava cast with $10 billion. You can like hire people to find it. You can try to get it yourself. It's up to you.
Here, I'll try to dig down. I don't want to teleport people because then I'm not going to get all the loot. Okay, boom, now I made it all the way down to the dirt level. Yo, I'm never gonna find this, bro. Oh, wait a second, someone said pro glitch. Like, see if I can look through the walls? That's a good idea.
Cancel my Pearson grant.
That was $3,000.
They're using the money to do a study on what happens to kids who can't afford college. They're offering me $50 to be a part of it.
You want $8,000?
Yes.
All right. The way this works is you come back next week.
That won't be necessary. I'm not going to pay you back. Now, hear me out. There's no way I can get the money to pay you. But instead of making you go through that whole stupid charade where you keep calling me and I keep making lame excuses until you hunt me down, I am willing to go straight to the leg breaking.
Really?
Yes. Whenever you say, I just show up and you start snapping bones. Arms, legs, whatever. Invite anyone you want. I promise I will scream and cry and beg for mercy and make it so loud and so horrible that no one who sees it will ever miss another payment again. Now, you can't buy that kind of publicity.
Couldn't I just not give you the money and still break your arms and legs? Wouldn't that accomplish the same thing?
True, but then I think your point starts to get muddled. Maybe we should sleep on it.
You got all the subroutines, the GUI, all that into 16K? I can't get a Boolean sort in that.
You youngsters are spoiled by all that cheap RAM. Now, when I started out, I had an 8-bit bus that ran at 4.7 megahertz, and I was happy to have it.
This is fantastic. I haven't understood a word you've said for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, you don't have to be that impressed. Sure, now he owns a Gulfstream jet and a baseball team, but there was a time when this guy's name was Accident Pants. Remember that? Remember that?
I remember somebody begging me for a loan. Remember that? Remember that? Now listen, really not here to socialize. I've seen some of the programming you boys have done. The server-to-server algorithm, the evolution simulator, that's all good stuff.
He thinks we're geniuses.
Well, good enough for a 2-year contract anyway. Full benefits, stock options. We're talking 6 figures each.
Oh, my God! Wait, how many is 6?
I'm not being charitable. I'm locking you in while you're still cheap. But I need an answer right now. Otherwise, it's not worth it to me.
Well,
That's a very generous offer, Mr. Hampton, but no.
Mom, what do you...
Malcolm's going to college. He's going to finish his education, but thank you very much.
He wasn't asking you. He was...
Ma'am, I completely understand. I should have talked to you first. Consider the offer withdrawn. Sorry, kid. 24/7 job. You need your whole family behind you. And don't be mad at your mom. She's only trying to look out for you. Who knows how far I would have gone if I went to college.
Canceled my Pearson grant.
That was...
Kardashev simulator?
The countdown begins in Tokyo. 27 days alone means 20 million ways to cope with that. I'm in a reckless fever, lost a girl, I tease her, thought I'd never be her. Quite the job you've done on me, sir. You've been hosting.
I'm a psycho. You're a psycho. You're a psycho.
That was... Honestly, I like ChatGPT, but I don't like Gemini. Is the actual Gemini? No, it's not.
Арбуз, привет.
Please, Zoe, no.
Were you fucking with my kid? Huh? Were you fucking with him?
Yeah, he was looking at the toy.
Okay, guys, I just missed the crazy space of
his first day at a new school. The transfer student walked in on a group of delinquents playing soccer in the hallway. 1 second, they were cheering over a goal, and
One of the questions I get asked.
I was closing up my food truck at midnight when a man dove behind my counter and whispered, "If they ask, you never saw me." 10 seconds later, a white pickup rolled slowly around the corner with its lights off. 2 men inside, scanning the empty lot. The passenger leaned out and looked right at me. "Hey, you see a guy run through here? Skinny, gray hoodie?" I pointed my chin toward the highway underpass without letting myself think about it. "Somebody ran that way a minute ago, moving fast." The truck peeled off. I stood there with a spatula in my hand and my heart going like a jackhammer. The man crawled out from behind my fryer station. In the light of my heat lamps, I got my first real look at him. Mid-20s maybe. No jacket in 40-degree weather, work boots with no laces, and his hands. His hands were wrecked, split knuckles. Blisters gone hard. The hands of someone who'd been working outdoors every day for a very long time. "Please," he said. His voice cracked on the one word. "Please, I can't go back there. My apartment is above the garage where I parked the truck." I got him upstairs, locked the door, flipped the deadbolt, and dragged a chair under the knob, which I'd only ever seen in movies. My hands wouldn't hold still. "What's your name?" "Emilio." He was staring at my kitchen table like it was a museum exhibit. I realized he...
So just a ton of these.
How do you feel about people showing up at your house unannounced? Personally, I can't stand it. And after what happened to my wife last week, I have even less patience for it. She was home alone one morning when a man knocked on our door. When she answered, he didn't introduce himself or explain why he was there. He just stood on the porch and asked her, "Do you have a vagina?" My wife was completely disgusted. What is the best way to mess with your daughter's boyfriend when meeting him? I have 3 daughters, and as they started getting older, I quickly realized I was going to have to deal with boys showing up at my house to take them out. I'm a pretty protective father, so I figured I might as well make sure these young men understood who they were dealing with. One evening, my worst nightmare came true, and all 3 of my daughters had dates planned on the same night. So I did the only logical thing and pulled out my shotgun and sat by the front door and started cleaning. At exactly 5 p.m., there was a knock, so I opened the door with the shotgun still in my hands, and a young man was standing on the porch. He said, "Hi, I'm Eddie. I'm here to pick up Betty. We're going to go and eat some spaghetti. Is she ready?" I looked him over, then called for Betty. She came downstairs, kissed me on the cheek, and left with Eddie. I went back to cleaning my shotgun. At 6 p.m., there was another knock, so I opened the door, shotgun in hand, and there was another young man standing there. This guy said, "Hey, my name is Joe. I'm here to pick up Flo. We're going to see a show. Is she ready to go?" I scratched my chin, called for Flo, and she hurried downstairs, kissed me on the cheek, and left with Joe. I sat back down and continued cleaning my shotgun. At 7 p.m., there was another knock. I grabbed my shotgun and walked to the door. Sure enough, there was another young man standing on the porch. He smiled and started introducing himself by saying, "Hello? My name is Chuck, and I'm ready to..." And before that son of a bitch could say anything else, I shot him, because you and I both know what he was going to say next. What is the best way to mess with your daughter's boyfriend when... What's it really like being a door-to-door salesman? I used to work for a cable company, going door-to-door in neighborhoods trying to get people to switch their internet and TV service. It was honestly one of those jobs where you got really good at handling rejection because most people didn't even let you finish your first sentence. I had been walking around one neighborhood for most of the afternoon, knocking on door after door, and honestly, some people were polite, some just shook their heads, but most people didn't even bother opening the door. By the time I got to the last house of the night, I was exhausted and had pretty much accepted that I wasn't making another sale. Still, I figured I might as well knock and hope I'd get lucky. It had been a rough month, and I really needed to start making things happen. So I walked up to the house, rang the doorbell, and waited, and after a few seconds, I heard some footsteps coming from inside. The door opened, and standing there was a little kid who couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, wearing a bathrobe that was way too big for him, and in one hand, he was holding a cigar, and in the other was a glass of what looked suspiciously like scotch. I had spent the entire day getting rejected by adults, and somehow the last person I had to sell internet to was a second grader dressed like a retired pimp. I figured his parents had to be somewhere inside, so I smiled and asked the kid if his parents were home. He took a slow sip from his glass, looked me up and down, and said, "What the fuck do you think? What's it really like being a door-to-door salesman? I used to work for a cable company, going door-to-door." Does anyone actually own a parrot that can speak? Have you ever actually thought about how weird parrots are? They're literally animals that can sit in your house and talk back to you like another person. Well, that exact thought is what led me to my local pet store to see if it was actually possible for me to buy a parrot. I've always considered myself a pretty religious and respectable man, so if I was getting a parrot, I needed one that was, in my words, chill. After work one day, I stopped by a local pet store and noticed a beautiful parrot. The owner told me she was intelligent, friendly, and easy to train, so I figured she sounded perfect and brought her home. I decided to name her Princess. Everything seemed great at first until she started talking, and by talking I mean swearing. This bird seemed to know every profanity imaginable. F this. F that. What the hell? Get the hell out of here! At first I tried ignoring it, figuring she'd eventually stop. When that didn't work, I started correcting her and told her that kind of language wasn't acceptable in my home. Princess only got worse. Every time I walked past her cage, she'd start shouting obscenities at me. Eventually, I completely lost my patience. I grabbed her, marched her into the kitchen, opened the freezer, and put her inside. I slammed the door shut. For the next few moments, I could hear her squawking, shrieking, pounding against the door, and cursing up a storm. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. I immediately felt terrible and rushed over to open the freezer. Princess calmly stepped out, climbed onto my hand, and looked me straight in the eyes. "Sir, I am truly sorry if my language offended you. I assure you it will never happen again." I was stunned. Maybe the freezer was the trick. Then she glanced back toward the freezer and asked, "And, if I may ask, sir, what did the chicken do?" Does anyone actually own a parrot that can speak? Have you ever actually thought about how... What's the most unique name you've ever come across? I was walking home with my 3 daughters one afternoon when my oldest, Rose, started asking about her name. She wanted to know why I had chosen Rose for her, so I told her the story I had always planned to tell her. I explained that when my husband and I were bringing her home from the hospital, a beautiful rose had fallen from a tree and landed right on her head. We thought it was such a sweet coincidence that we decided Rose was the perfect name for her. She seemed pretty happy with that answer, and I could tell she liked having a little story behind her name. A few seconds later, my middle daughter, Lily, got curious too. She wanted to know why she had been named after a flower, so I gave her the same explanation. When we were bringing her home from the hospital, a lily had fallen from a nearby flower box and landed right on her head. We thought it was another beautiful coincidence, so we named her Lily. She smiled proudly and seemed just as pleased with her story as her sister was with hers. Honestly, I was enjoying the whole conversation. It was one of those little moments where you realize your kids are getting old enough to start becoming curious about their lives, and I loved seeing how interested they were in the stories behind their names. Then, my youngest, Cinderblock, started tugging on my hand and said,
Oh my gosh.
"Parents, when did you realize you raised an idiot?" I thought my son was a pretty well-behaved kid until the day our neighbors brought their new baby home from the hospital. We were invited over to meet the little guy, and that's when we learned that he had been born with a developmental condition that left him without ears. Before we left, I pulled my son aside to make sure he understood that this wasn't something we should point out or make jokes about. I made him promise me that he wouldn't mention the baby's ears or even say the word ears while we were there. Feeling pretty good about the conversation, he agreed, so we headed over. When we arrived, the baby's mother proudly brought us over to the crib. My son leaned over and took a good look at the baby. For a moment, I was actually impressed. He looked down at the baby and told his mother what a beautiful baby she had, pointing out his little feet, his hands, his cute little nose, and especially his beautiful eyes. The mother thanked him, and I started to relax. At this point, I was thinking, okay, maybe he actually listened to me. He seemed to be handling the whole situation perfectly. Then he looked up at the baby's mother and innocently asked if the baby was able to see all right. She smiled and explained that, thankfully, the doctor had said the baby would have perfect vision. My son nodded thoughtfully and said, "Wow, that's definitely a relief to hear." I smiled, relieved that somehow he'd managed to make it through the entire conversation without saying anything he wasn't supposed to. Then the baby's mother asked, "Why is that such a relief?" My son looked at her like the answer was obvious and said, "Because he'd be shit out of luck if he needed glasses." Parents, when did you realize you raised... When did you ask a question that you really wish you hadn't? I learned pretty quickly after becoming a dad that there are some things you just don't think about until you're actually in the situation. When my wife gave birth to our first child, I was overwhelmed with excitement. There's really nothing like holding your baby for the first time and realizing that your whole life has just changed. I was exhausted, emotional, and honestly amazed that this little person was finally here. Of course, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't also looking Have you ever met someone who completely lived up to a stereotype? Yes, and I know that probably sounds a little mean, but hear me out. I consider myself one of the most open-minded people you'll ever meet. But when someone comes along who is practically a textbook example of a stereotype, sometimes you just have to admit it. It started around 10 p.m. when I walked into my local Denny's and grabbed a seat at the counter. A blonde woman named Brandy was sitting next to me, watching the TV above the bar. The 10 p.m. news was just coming on, and the lead story was about a man standing on the ledge of a tall building, literally preparing to jump. Brandy, who I had never met before, looked over and asked if I thought he was actually going to jump. I told her I thought he would, and she disagreed. Before long, we had turned it into a $100 bet. I was feeling pretty confident, especially because I had already seen the exact same story on the 6 p.m. news. Sure enough, a few seconds later, the man on the ledge suddenly jumped, taking a swan dive off the building. Brandy looked completely stunned. She sighed, picked up her $100 bill and handed it to me, saying, "Fair's fair." I told her I couldn't take the money. I explained that I had already seen it on the 6 p.m. news, so I knew exactly how it was going to end. She just shrugged and told me she had seen it too. Then she added, "I just didn't think he'd do it again." I paused for a second. Then I took the $100 back because sometimes you just have to let people pay for their own stupidity. Have you ever met someone who completely lived up to a What's the reason you have trust issues? And I'm not kidding when I say this, but I have my 2-year-old daughter to thank for them. Yes, I know how that sounds, but let me explain. When my wife left for a few weeks to take care of her sick aunt, I suddenly found myself spending a lot more time alone with our 2-year-old daughter. Thankfully, she had recently received a little tea set for her birthday, and it quickly became her favorite toy. Every evening while I sat on the couch watching the news, she would carefully fill one of the tiny cups and bring it over to me. "Would you like some tea, Daddy?" she would ask proudly. I'd take the cup, sip it, and tell her, "That is some excellent tea." Her face would light up every time. She was absolutely convinced she was taking care of her dad, and I was more than happy to play along. This became our little routine. She'd disappear for a minute, come back carrying her tiny cup with both hands, and wait patiently while I took a drink. Then I'd give her a big smile and tell her how delicious it was. By the time my wife finally came home, I couldn't wait to show her how much our little girl had been looking after me. Sure enough, that afternoon, our daughter walked into the living room holding her little cup of tea. "Look," I said to my wife. "She's been doing this the whole time." Our daughter handed me the cup, and I took a long, exaggerated sip as usual. "Wow, that's the best tea you've made yet," I said. My wife smiled, watched me swallow, and then casually asked, "Did it ever occur to you that the only place you can reach to get water is the toilet? What's the reason you have trust issues?" And I'm not kidding when I say this, but I have my 2-year-old. Have you ever asked a girl out and immediately got rejected? I was in college at the time, and one night, a few of my friends and I went out to a bar near campus. It was pretty crowded, and after a couple of drinks, I noticed this girl standing with her friends across the room. She was really pretty, and I figured I had nothing to lose. I spent about 10 minutes trying to convince myself to go talk to her. I eventually told my friends I was going over there before I could change my mind. So I walked up, introduced myself, and started talking to her. Her name was Poppy, and surprisingly, the conversation was actually going pretty well. She was laughing at my jokes, asking me questions, and seemed genuinely interested in what I was saying. After a few minutes, I figured it was time to officially shoot my shot. Looking back, I have absolutely no idea why I thought this was a good idea. I might have actually botched it before she even had a chance to say no. I literally asked this poor woman if she wanted to come back to my place sometime and watch High School DxD with me. She replied by saying, "Oh, I'm flattered, but I don't think so. Isn't that some kind of little kids show?" I told her no worries, and that High School DxD was, definitely a kids show. There was a pretty awkward silence after that. She gave me a strange look, and I realized I had somehow made the situation significantly worse. I was about to walk away when she looked at me again and said, "I mean, you're nice, but you're just not really my type." Then she added, "You kind of have a face like the back of a boat." I just stood there. I wasn't even offended. I was more confused than anything. I didn't know how to respond to that. What was I supposed to say? So I just looked at her for a second. I didn't get upset. I didn't say anything. I just gave her a very stern look, if you know what I mean. Have you ever asked a girl out and immediately got rejected? I was in college at the time, and one night, a few of my friends and I went out to a bar near campus. What's a question you should never ask a woman? My buddies and I were at the country club one morning talking about our last round of golf, and this beautiful woman walks up and says, "Hey, I played golf in college. Mind if I join you guys next week?" None of us wanted to be the guy who said no, so I ended up telling her, "Sure, we tee off at 6:30 a.m. though." I was thinking that would scare her off, but to our surprise, she looked at me and said, "That's fine. I might be up to 15 minutes late though." Next week came around and she was there at 6:30 a.m. on the dot, and she absolutely kicked our ass. On top of that, she was friendly and easygoing. It was hard not to like her. So we invited her back to play again next week. During the second week, the same thing happened. She showed up right on time, but this time she played left-handed and still beat us. At that point, we were completely thrown off, and none of us could figure her out. When the third week came around, she showed up 15 minutes late, and we were thinking that maybe, just maybe, we had a shot. No, because this time she played right-handed again and still edged all of us. After the round, we were sitting in the clubhouse, and I finally asked, "All right, you've got to explain something. How do you decide whether you're playing right-handed or left?" She says, "Well, I'm ambidextrous, but I actually have a little system. My husband likes to sleep without clothes, so before I leave, I check which way his willy is pointing. If it's to the right, I play right-handed. If it's to the left, I play left-handed." I then asked her the million-dollar question. "All right, that makes sense, but what if his willy is pointing straight up?" She takes a sip of her drink and says, "Then I'm 15 minutes late." What's a question you should never ask a woman? My buddies and I were at the country club one morning. Guys, what's the best compliment you've ever received from a girl? Last night, I offered one of my coworkers a ride home after work. She is drop-dead gorgeous and always wears open-toed shoes, which I love. I try not to think of her in that way, however, as she is 18 and I am 25. That being said, I still managed to end up in a temporary love triangle. She accepted my offer to drop her off at her apartment when we were done working. On our way, she answered a phone call from her boyfriend. I had no idea what the boyfriend was saying, but based on my coworker's unexpectedly candid responses, it became obvious that her boyfriend was upset with her for posting a photo on social media of her drinking somewhere with random guys. My coworker explained that the random random guys actually work with, and the photos were taken during our monthly office party. The conversation between my coworker and him became more and more heated, especially when she started using words like insecure, immature, and jealous to respond to him. I was doing my best not to look like I was eavesdropping, even though it was impossible not to. The boyfriend must have realized his girlfriend was in the car with a person of interest, because my coworker's next response to him was, no, not an Uber. One of the guys at work offered to drive me home. She listened and listened, shaking her head and rolling eyes, before opening her mouth and suddenly saying, yes, he's one of the guys in the photo. In fact, he's the tall guy on the far left with the cute dimples. It was literally the first compliment I've gotten from the opposite gender about my look, since my girlfriend broke up with me for chasing her with a blade due to anger problems I had because of my steroid use. Guys, what's the best compliment you've ever received from a girl? Last night, I offered one of my coworkers a ride home after work. She is drop-dead gorgeous and always wears open-toed shoes, which I love. I try not to think of her in that way, however, as she is 18 and I am 25. That being said, I still managed to end up in a temporary love triangle. What inappropriate thing has a student said that was true/funny? Our English teacher, Mrs. Hensley, decided to turn our lesson into one of those dumb exercises where she went around the room and made each of us use a new word in a sentence. Our class hated these because you never knew what word she was going to pick, and if you couldn't come up with something quickly, everyone would sit there watching you struggle. That afternoon, she wrote a few words on the board and started calling on people. Abigail got fortunate and said, I was fortunate enough to find my lost cat. Max, the popular kid, got determined and said, I was determined to watch anime before I did my homework last night. A few other kids gave their answers, and everything was going smoothly. Eventually, Mrs. Hensley wrote one final word on the board, harassment. She looked around the classroom and said, all right, who wants to give me a sentence using the word harassment? The room instantly went quiet. Nobody wanted to be the first one to answer. Mrs. Hensley waited a few seconds, then looked toward Johnny's desk. Johnny, why don't you give it a try? Johnny was the kid who turned a third-grade fire drill into an underground lockdown Olympics, complete with a stolen lunch money betting pool, 17 kids sprinting laps around the flagpole, and a vending machine sponsorship deal in the works before the actual fire department arrived. So the second she called his name, everyone started looking at each other, wondering what he was going to come up with this time. He stood up slowly and thought about it for a moment. Mrs. Hensley gave him an encouraging smile and said, take your time, Johnny. Just use the word in a sentence. Without hesitation, Johnny looked around the room, then smiled like he'd just come up with the perfect answer and said, well, Teach, funny you ask, because I actually met a girl the other day and harassment a lot to me. What inappropriate thing has a student said that was true/funny? Our English teacher, Mrs. Hensley, decided to turn our lesson into one of those dumb exercises where she went around the room and made each of us use a new word in a sentence. What's the most annoying gender double standard? My wife and I were having an argument one night when she suggested we ask her best friend to settle it. I agreed, but before we started, we made one rule. I would explain my side without my wife interrupting. Then her friend would give her honest opinion. After that, my wife could respond. So I explained what happened. We'd been visiting my wife's hometown, and on the day we were leaving, I was upset about something. So I stayed in the car while the rest of the family went inside for lunch. My brother-in-law and father-in-law both came out and asked me to join them, but I refused. After they finished eating, my wife and I left without me saying goodbye to her parents. Naturally, my wife was furious, which is how we ended up arguing about it. My wife tried jumping in several times while I was explaining, but I kept reminding her about our agreement. Once I finished, her friend thought about it for a moment and looked directly at me and said, well, honestly, I think you're completely in the wrong. Your family shouldn't have to deal with your mood just because you're upset. They invited you inside and you still refused. You didn't even say goodbye before leaving. That's incredibly disrespectful. At some point, it's not about being angry anymore. It's about basic manners. She gave me a disappointed look before turning toward my wife. My wife sighed and said, actually, we were at his parents' house and I was the one who was angry. It was me who skipped lunch and didn't say goodbye to his parents, not him. I was just too mad at the time. Her friend suddenly looked uncomfortable. She scratched her head for a second and said, well, in that case, it's still your fault. Your wife was upset and you should have comforted her. You're the man after all. What's the most annoying gender double standard? My wife and I were... What is the worst gift you've ever received for your birthday? My wife and I have been married long enough that I've learned there are certain questions you should probably ask twice before making any major plan. Unfortunately, I didn't follow that rule one year when her birthday was coming up. That night, I was sitting on the edge of our bed while she stood in front of the mirror, looking at herself. After a few minutes, I asked her, your birthday is coming up, dear. Is there anything specific you would like? She sighed and said, honestly, I'd really like to be 12 again. I thought about it for a second, and it suddenly made perfect sense. She must have been feeling nostalgic for being a kid, so I decided I was going to give her the ultimate childhood birthday. The morning of her birthday, I woke her up with a huge bowl of Cocoa Puffs and took her to a theme park. We spent the entire day going on every ride I could find. Roller coasters, spinning rides, drop rides, everything. 5 hours later, we were both exhausted and my wife looked like she just survived a natural disaster. I wasn't done though, because after that, I took her to a diner and ordered her a massive cheeseburger with bacon, extra fries, and a giant milkshake. Later on, we went to the movies, where I loaded her up with popcorn, a huge Coke, and all her favorite candy. By the time we finally got home, we could barely move. We collapsed into bed, completely exhausted. I turned toward her with a huge smile, proud of the birthday I'd planned. Well, honey, I said, what was it like being 12 again? She slowly opened her eyes, stared at me for a few seconds, and said, 12? I meant my dress size, you idiot. What is the worst gift you've ever received for your birthday? My wife and I have been married. What is a high-paying job that almost nobody applies for because the work sounds weird? My brother and I got laid off from our jobs around the same time, so we decided to go down to the unemployment office together and apply for benefits. Neither of us was particularly excited about being unemployed, but at least we could get the paperwork out of the way together. When we got to the counter, the clerk called me up first and asked, what is your occupation? I told him, I'm a panty stitcher. I sew pantyhose for women. He typed something into his computer, looked up my occupation, and told me it was considered unskilled labor. Apparently there wasn't much training required, so I qualified for $300 a week in unemployment benefits. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I figured that's just how things work. When my brother stepped up, the clerk asked him the same question. My brother confidently said, I am a diesel fitter. The clerk typed that into the computer, paused for a moment, and said, that's classified as skilled labor. He finished filling out the paperwork and told my brother he'd be receiving $600 a week. I immediately looked at him. Wait, you're getting twice as much as me? The clerk nodded. His occupation requires more skill. That really annoyed me. What skill? I asked. I've been sewing pantyhose for years. The clerk shrugged and said, according to our records, his occupation requires specialized training. I looked over at my brother. Specialized training? What does he actually do that's so difficult? The clerk started to explain, but I cut him off. Seriously, I do all the actual work. I sew the pantyhose together, make sure they're the right size, check the stitching, everything. All he does is hold up the pantyhose after I'm finished and says, I think diesel fitter. What is a high-paying job that almost nobody applies for because the work sounds weird? What's the dumbest misunderstanding you've ever had with your spouse? My wife usually handles the grocery shopping because she's organized enough to actually remember what we need. Me? I'll walk into the store for milk and somehow come home with batteries, frozen pizza, and Pokemon cards. So whenever she asks me to help with the shopping list, I try to take it seriously. One Saturday morning, we were getting ready to head to the grocery store when she handed me the list and said, can you add ketchup? Sure, I said. She walked into the laundry room while I stayed in the kitchen looking at the list. For some reason, I couldn't find a pen anywhere. I checked the junk drawer, the counter, and even the cup by the coffee maker where we normally keep them. Nothing. Then I looked over at the bottle of ketchup sitting on the table. I figured, well, she only said to put ketchup on the shopping list. She never actually said I had to write it, so I squeezed out a generous line of ketchup right across the middle of the paper. A few minutes later, she came back into the kitchen, picked up the list, and just stared at it. Then she slowly looked over at me.